Hey, welcome all. Welcome to the Common Good Podcast, Tuesday edition on March 8th of 2022. A day, Robb Ryerse, that the Pagitts really celebrate every year, starting 31 years ago when the birth of our second child took place 31 years ago on this day. So it's his birthday, Taylor Pagitt's birthday. So happy birthday to the boy.
Fantastic. Happy birthday, Taylor. That's great.
Sunny outside and beautiful on a birthday. He lives in New York. But anyway, beautiful in the place where he was born. So I'm in Minneapolis. Rob, how are things in Fayetteville, Arkansas?
Things are good. We're feels like spring is fighting to arrive. We are in a little bit of a cold snap right now, and but things are good. Doug, I don't know if you saw this, but I went a little bit viral on Twitter this
I've been hearing this. I'm just glad you still have time for us around here on the podcast.
Yeah.
After that,
I mean, I want to be very careful to say viral for me. I don't know. What would you like? What would be the Twitter stats that would consider that you would label yourself as viral?
Oh, I don't know, 100,000 views, retweets, that kind of stuff, somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, when we've done those
for you,
the ones that went viral, that's what they were. That's the level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. So maybe this is viral with a small V. Then I don't know. I normally
have no idea what gets to count as viral. What happened?
I tweet. I tweet innocuous things. I typically get 5, 10 likes. Maybe a retweet, I mean, like I am not a social media influencer. So I think Friday or Saturday, I tweeted two very innocuous tweets. One was, if you want to understand the religious right, read Jesus and John Wayne by Kristen Dumas. And the other was, if you want Marjorie Taylor Greene out of Congress, don't you? Help Marcus for Georgia make that a reality. Two very I tweet stuff like this all the time. Just innocuous all the time. 500 likes and 45 retweets on the Jesus and John Wayne, and 1,800 likes and over 300 retweets on the Marcus for Georgia tweet. It's just, Saturday, I was in Kansas City visiting the Kansas City Institute of Art. Not for me, because I am the world's worst drawer, but I happen to be in a family of really talented artists, one of whom is graduating from high school and going to college. And so anyways, I was touring the Kansas City Institute of Art, looking at my phone, going, what is going on? And there was no big pickup. Like, it wasn't like somebody famous retweeted. It just kind of took off. It was weird.
Well, dude, you have once again gone into the deep dark world of never being able to understand, like what makes love, what is a sense of serenity and peace in a human heart, and what makes Twitter work.
Exactly.
Hey, just yesterday, I was ranting about the former attorney general talking to the former failed presidential candidate, Donald Trump. And Donald Trump was saying to Bill Barr, I'm going to go tweet about this now, and in sort of a way to poke at Bill Barr, because Bill Barr had asked him to stop saying things. And then Trump looked back at him and said, do you know what makes a good tweet? This is straight from Bill Barr's mouth in an interview that I watched on Sunday. Trump says, do you know what makes a good tweet or a successful tweet? And Barr says, what? And he says, just the right amount of crazy. And then Bill Barr starts laughing when he retold the story. And so I thought that was kind of funny, which I thought was horrible, that the president of the United States is using a mixture of, crazy talk in his public statements. But maybe somewhere you found just the right amount of crazy. I guess the real question is that gonna float? Is that gonna get you 1,000, likes and hundreds of retweets when you launch your Truth Social account? That
Doug, if you sign, listen, we need to sign. I think we absolutely need to do this. I
yes,
think our podcast listeners need us to do this. We need to take a deep dive into Truth Social. We need to this week create Truth Social accounts and
yes,
attempt to get ourselves kicked off of Truth Social and screenshot it all and talk about it next week.
absolutely. Because apparently, for those who don't know, Truth Social is the currently failing social media network started by Donald Trump with Donald Trump money as a for-profit company run.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You just said, in all seriousness, the phrase started with Donald Trump money. There's
Yeah,
no way Donald Trump put a
no,
dime into Truth Social.
he's the primary owner of this thing, and is using it to grift money off of all of his followers. So that's what he's up to. Devin Nunes is running it. Devin Nunes is a former congressman from California who has given up all of his calls to be sure that Benghazi was properly adjudicated, and now is running a failing social media network that just launched, and it's the alternative to Twitter that Donald Trump was removed from because he could not seem to not violate its terms of service. Somehow Twitter having a higher level of standard than the United States Senate for the behavior of the president of the United States, removed from Twitter. So they're launching this new one, and I don't think we can do it this week from what I have seen so far, because I think they're still only letting small numbers of people in. I think we have to get on a wait list because they don't have the network built large enough to make it happen. But I like your idea, because what I saw the other day was that Truth Social has a very strict set of rules about what you can and cannot say on their social media site. Funny enough, Trump starts it all because he felt like he was canceled for writing violent things and things that violated the terms of service around public health, and thought that was so horrible that he could be removed from that. But then the very network that he's using to make a bunch of money off of his followers has its own set of rules about what you can and cannot write about. And what's primary in that list is you can't say negative things about the social network or the people involved with it, which includes Donald Trump. So it's in a protect my ego state. So I think, we should hurry, because it could be like a Trump University degree. It could be like a Trump steak. It could be like a Trump casino. We got to get into Trump's. It could be like a Trump re-election campaign. We've got to get in early, because this thing is destined to fail, like all the other things of the Donald Trump ventures. And I'm not just being petty. I really do think it's not going to last long, because social networks like this, if they don't have tens of millions of people, they're really useless. I mean, it'll start looking like the algorithm of my Facebook feed, which I cannot figure out why Facebook shows me what they do. I have 5,000 friends, in my personal profile thing. I look at statuses all day long of people. I have no idea who they are. The people close to me in my life, my own relatives, I rarely see them. I cannot seem to figure out. I think I need to click the button that says only show my favorites, but it makes it quite boring. And that's what Truth Social is going to become. But I think you're right. We screenshot it. We follow along. We see how many things that we say that are truthful. We have to only say truthful things.
Yes.
How many truthful things or opinion that we express gets us kicked off of Truth Social, because I don't think it's going to take long.
Yeah. As you were talking about it, I had seen a friend of mine post on Facebook earlier today that he had gotten his Truth Social account. And so I just, while you were talking, Doug, I sent him a message and asked if it's invite based. And if so, I'd love one. Because a lot of these are invite based. Once you get in, then they give you 5 or 6 invites. So you invite your friends, so you can build your network. So you have people that you already know on there, so you're more inclined to keep using it. I don't know if Truth Social uses that tried and true technique of building a quality network. Something tells me they might not. So.
Yeah, something tells me that too. Hey, you know what that reminds me of is Clubhouse. Remember when Clubhouse launched, and it was one of those, you had to get an invite, and I was hunting for one of those. It has just gone. I don't know if you follow Clubhouse. I don't know if any of our listeners follow Clubhouse. We've talked about doing a podcast on Clubhouse, but I don't know if it's nowhere to be found.
I wanted to be like all into Clubhouse, and I just couldn't do it. I mean,
Yeah,
I have an account, and I
me too.
occasionally see it mentioned a bit, here and there, but Twitter seemed to have launched like the rooms thing or whatever. I
Never
don't know what
used one
it's
of those
called.
either. These are all the audio
Yeah.
networks. I think Twitter
Yeah.
has one, Facebook has one. Clubhouse is a standalone, had a bunch of money behind it. Like, as it turns out, as hard as we should be on Twitter and on Snapchat and on Instagram and certainly Facebook, it turns out it's really hard to create a social
Mhm.
network like that.
Mhm.
What it takes to operate that thing is of such a massive expense and expertise.
Yep.
People getting into, but what I was surprised about Truth Social is how many other social networks geared at the same Trumpy audience
Yep.
already
Yep.
exist. This Getter
Mhm.
and one other one that's got a couple 100,000 people on it that are part of it. It's really something how many of these alternatives have popped up. And as hard as we are on the incompetency of the Trump administration and many of the people around him, the followers sure are ambitious. They really do know how to organize stuff, and they know how to raise money, and they know how to get their voices out there. It's really quite stunning. So they're making a run at it. I don't think it's going to be successful, and I hope in all the way that's true. All right, Rob. Well, we got a little bit of news to talk about today, and often
Yeah.
we have a candidate that's on. Well, we did have a candidate scheduled for today. I thought it was interesting that the candidate who's running for Congress that we're going to have on today had to tell us just at the start something has come up, and I can't make it today because she's a school teacher or works in a
Mhm.
school and has to fill
Yep.
in for somebody who had a personal emergency and couldn't show up. And it's just a reminder that when someone runs for Congress, when someone runs for the
Mhm.
Senate, really when someone runs for almost any position, um, they're doing it as an addition to whatever their job is.
Yeah.
Sometimes the job is to be an elected official in another capacity or the same capacity they're running for. It's just an awful lot of work. Nobody really has time for it. Like if you just said, well, I don't think I can do this helpful, good thing of public service. I can't do it because I just don't have the time. Who's got the time? Well, nobody has the time to do it. I mean, that's the whole
Right.
thing. I mean, I know there's one, former political candidate that's currently unemployed and just living his retirement in Florida. That guy maybe's got time to do it because he's got nothing else to do other than respond to lawyers. But other than that, I think most people are just frankly a little bit busy. So I thought that was instructive that
Mhm.
here this person that we want to talk to because she's running for office has to reschedule because she's like, I actually have so many other things going on, and one of those has had to take priority today.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we're gonna reschedule with her, and I can't wait to have the conversation with her because she is a uh, a fascinating person running in a super interesting race that I think is really going to be educational for folks. I think it's one of those races that, and I don't want to. I'm just teasing it here. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. But it's one of those races that people would think, wait a minute, what? And
Huh?
yeah, so it'll be interesting.
So stick with us. We'll reschedule as soon as possible. Hey, we haven't talked about the State of the Union. It feels like a
Mhm.
long time ago. I mean, it was now a week ago, and so much has happened in the world. So much has happened in Ukraine. So much has happened with your Twitter account and with my false positive COVID test. It's hard to remember back just a mere
Yeah.
168 hours ago, just the hours before the State of the Union. Did you watch it? And what are your thoughts on the State of the Union? How do you think it
Yeah.
impacts the political environment
Yeah.
we find ourselves in?
Yeah. So I said this last week when Dan and I were doing our State of the Union pregame that it's strange for me, but in so many instances, like State of the Union addresses, like conventions, so much of it is just political theater that is
Mhm,
like it feels to me like it's not uh it's all so choreographed that
mhm.
I just have very little interest in it. And I figure if anything happens that is noteworthy, um, I'll find out about it on Twitter and I'll catch the highlights. So and then coupled that with, I really thought Joe Biden has a lot of really great strengths. One of them is not giving a real rousing speech.
Right.
He is not Barack Obama. He is not Ronald Reagan. And the thought of listening to him talk for an hour, I just was like, I really thought, 25 minutes in and out is what he should have done. And so no, the very long answer. No, I did not watch.
I did, enjoyed it, top
Yeah.
to bottom, enjoyed the visual of seeing the vice president and the speaker of the house,
Mhm.
sitting behind Joe Biden. I thought that was great.
Yep.
Was, like some people who watch those things, I was interested in when and who would stand at what particular moments. I think that's
Mhm.
interesting because it's part a report to Congress from the executive branch. What it's designed to be is a report about what is the state of the union. What I was disappointed in, and this has been true for me of every State of the Union I've watched as an adult, it just seems that format, the 1 hour long laundry list of things that you want to accomplish based on the things that you did accomplish previously, is just an ineffective communication tool. I am utterly shocked and surprised that that's the tack that it takes.
Mhm.
Pointing to somebody that you've invited in the crowd who sort of is an anecdote to your, or
Mhm.
an anecdote of the point that you want to make about some bill you want to pass or whatever, just seems not to motivate anybody. And I was thinking about the screenwriters that we know and the Hollywood TV producers and movie producers and writers that we know who are offering themselves on a regular basis to Democratic candidates to help them with messaging. Like, wouldn't it be great if a State of the Union was crafted like an hour-long epic tale, right? Not
Yep.
a list of things, but some drama built into it and a couple of good stories and a real a theme, like not from a group of political speechwriters, but from a group of storytellers.
Yeah.
And at some point, some president is going to say, hey, we can tell stories in a really different way in this country, and we can name off all those things. There's a way to include all the laundry list, but we would keep people hooked. I thought it was clever that they started with, and smart, they started with Ukraine for 15 minutes and talked
Mhm.
about that. And I thought Biden made a bunch of points they wanted to make. The big structural change in the State of the Union that I noticed was they always deliver a line. The state of the union is strong. Right. At some point, they say that normally in the first 5 to 15 minutes. They waited on this one until the very end. It was part of the closing. Right. So
Mm.
I noticed that, like, oh,
Yeah.
there's an innovation, that has come from the tweet writers. Way to move
Well,
that line. And it just
okay.
seems, man, there would be a way to tell the story that would be so intriguing. And I say the
Yeah.
same thing to pastors and to communicators of any kind. There are more than one way to tell a story than
Yes.
the speech making act that you're doing with
Yeah.
this format. And it just seems that's what should have and could have um, been done. And then you could create a short film to go with it, for crying out loud, right? You could then release the day afterward a 15 or 40 minute, film of the State of the Union of America that you've been building for a year. I don't know. It just
Yeah.
feels like we're
Yeah.
going to give all this energy to it. Let's act like it actually really does matter.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Watching in real time, when I came in to check out the State of the Union on Twitter, the discussion of the State of the Union was dominated by the actions of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert.
Mhm.
Watching in real time, did you have a sense that what they were doing, that their disruptions were such a big deal? Did the camera pan to them when they were chanting "Build the Wall"? Did you have any sense of Lauren Boebert interrupting the president as he was talking about um, military service members who had been killed and about to speak of his own son's death? And did you have any sense of like this thing that is going to coming out of the State of the Union, the dominant conversation, at least that I saw, was about the actions of these two congresswomen. Did you have a sense in the moment? This is a little bit like the Janet Jackson, Justin Timberlake thing. Did you know in the moment that this was going to be a big deal, that this wardrobe malfunction was happening, or was it only later? Like, did you know that this big disruption was taking place, or did you find out about it later when you got on social media or saw the news reports?
I did hear it when it happened and wondered I wonder what that outburst was and who that was. I could faintly hear a female voice, and it clearly was a disruptive shout. Couldn't really make out the words. Once I heard a recount of that the words were 1,000 or 30 servicemen in Afghanistan or whatever it was that was yelled about deaths in military situations, which was clearly trying to peg the death of the Marines in Afghanistan on Joe Biden. Then it made sense that that's what I heard. But no, it didn't seem to stop the speech. It didn't notice that Biden, paused or turned his head or limited what he was going to say or anything like that. There's so much applause and interruption that goes on there anyway. It didn't feel. It reminded me back, I don't know, 12 years ago when the congressman yelled out, "You lie," to Joe Biden or to Barack Obama, and
he was censured.
Like yes.
He was censured by Congress for that action, and roundly, condemned by everybody for, such a break in decorum.
But I will say it was like watching a sporting event and you see something happen, say a football analogy, and you see a lineman hold a defensive, a lineman, and you're like, are the refs going to call that? Did you see that? Like, you knew something went wrong there. Mm-hmm. And then you're kind of wondering. So like you, I just started looking around on the internet, in the 30 seconds to 2 minutes afterward, and I saw all these tweets of people like, what was that? Who said that? And then people, stirring up and getting interest, which tells me people watch this. Yes. They listen very intently, and any disruption is noticed and responded to, which tells you have an active live audience. Build on that, right?
Yes. Yes. And
just finish this thought. Stop talking to the people in the room.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
To report to Congress, but there are millions of other people, and you are talking to the people in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stop
completely agree.
And get over present. And this is true of every State of the Union. This isn't particularly Joe Biden. I thought his delivery was as good as it could be. He's, it was great. I get nervous for him as someone who also had a stuttering tick in my life as a child and teenager, when I can feel his speech patterns start to create the stutter that he also lives with. I get all kinds of anxiety. So when I watch Joe Biden talk for long periods of time, I know some people are like, it's boring and I don't like him and he's an old man or whatever. I just have anxiety for anyone who's doing any public speaking when they hit a stutter patch. There we go. A stutter patch. And so my anxiety is always hanging on those kinds of moments much more than and then I was worried about the stuff he was going to say, I know there's a lot of pushback on defund police and some of the other arguments that I wish wouldn't be taken the way that they are and not responded to.
Yeah. One of the really fascinating things, though, is that State of the Union addresses typically have very little political impact. Yeah. Like the political conventions, when someone accepts the nomination and they officially become the nominee of their party, they talk about there being a bump in the polls after that, and how big the bump is, and there's some sense that those things are going to have political impact. State of the Union addresses typically don't. They typically don't have political impact at all. There is no State of the Union bump.
Yeah. Except
Joe Biden got one. He got an 8% bump in his job approval ratings after the State of the Union address. It was wildly well received. Something like 78% of people who watched the speech approved of it. and he saw an 8% bump in his job approval. It was a
Interesting.
really remarkable political impact for a speech that I would have guessed was going to be a nothing burger.
And that they're confident on that polling that that's related to the
Yeah.
speech, not just to the other
Yeah.
things happening in Ukraine and so on?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, okay. Maybe I should sit back and stop asking people to write, an epic tale that draws the American heart into a story of what our possible
No,
future
no.
could.
Well,
And
just
it
imagine
might,
how big of
it
the
might not
bump
be an
could have
8%
been if
bump.
it had been a good speech.
Well, it was a good speech. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought it was a good speech. It, there were a few things I thought that he could have labored on a little longer. I was surprised that voting rights didn't come up more often. I was surprised that he didn't tie the insurrection and the destabilization that has been caused by one of the political parties in this country to what's going on in Ukraine. I thought that was an interesting non-association, which I think was intentional. I think he did not want to politicize what's going on in Ukraine by contrasting it with and comparing it to what's happening in the United States. So I thought that was smart to not do it, but I was surprised that he didn't and didn't do it. So, yeah, the State of the Unions they also feel to me like they're part of the apparatus of political elitism. And I don't mean one political party over the other. I mean the way that our representatives and the way that our elected officials are held up and are talked about, the honorific nature of our politicians. And as you and I know so well, working with so many of these politicians who are running for office, very few of them run for office because they want that. I mean, that's why I ran for office and didn't win. But most everybody else who runs, they're running for many other reasons. They don't really want to be sort of the honorable this and that and cherished in this way and kind of risen up. So they want to be in public service. And there's times where they talk about that, right? I'm here because I want to serve and I want to do this. I want to do this really well. Most of the people who are in Congress are earning less money and having less personal benefit to their life than the other things that they would be doing. Many of them, because if you've gotten to the point where you can win these seats or have won these seats, that opens up for you many personal benefit paths that you could take. So the State of the Unions and a lot of these other kinds of events, and they feel a little, award ceremony like to me, which, I've just got I just think that we have too much of that in our politics as it is. And something a little different would be a pretty good thing. Hey, what do you think about Biden? What do you think the impacts are going to be on Biden's announcement happening probably right now that the U.S. is going to limit Russian oil imports into the United States? This has been something that Republicans have been banging on him for the last, 5-7 days, saying that he really needs to do it, and he won't do it because he's kowtowing to the environmentalist wing of the country and all the rest. Do you think there's anything politically meaningful separate from whether it's good strategic pressure on Russia or not? Do you think there's anything political in there?
Yeah, this is going to be a complicated one. For better or for worse, one of the metrics that people use to judge a presidency is gas prices. It's just, it's one of those things that people, if if they're paying less at the tank, they have the sense of like, oh, okay, things are going well. And if they're paying more at the tank, they have the sense of like they're going badly. Whatever the cause is, whatever the reason is, whatever is happening to cause gas prices to fluctuate, that's one of those things that always tends to reflect on the president. And as gas prices rise, presidential approval ratings drop. So and I don't think those are I don't think it necessarily should be that way, but that's just the way it is. So limiting supply of gas of oil coming from Russia is going to limit supply, which is going to raise prices. And so, the real challenge that Biden has is, how do I do this thing that is the right
Good
thing?
evening, everyone. Welcome to the fourth installment of
Hello.
Doing that right now.
We're,
our series
yeah,
on the threat of Christian
Yeah.
nationalism, a faithful response.
What are you doing over there, Doug?
I was trying to look up an article about oil prices, and I clicked on something that launched a video, and all of a sudden it started playing a video.
That's awesome.
Hey, if you ever want to watch a Christian response to the threat of Christian nationalism after January 6th, we have videos for that on our website and on our YouTube channel. That's what you were just now hearing. So
yeah.
welcome.
So the right thing to do to limit Russian oil as a part of the sanctions against Russia, and to increase the pressure on them to stop their invasion of Ukraine. That's the right thing for the president to do. In doing the right thing, he runs the risk of hurting himself politically. And I think that's why Republicans were slamming him with that. As you said, they were trying to pressure him into doing it because it can hurt him politically. Now, what I think the president ought to do is, the president ought to say, listen, we need to talk about sacrifice here in the country, and frame that sacrifice not in terms of the American public needs to sacrifice more by paying more at the pump, but rather, I think what he needs to do is talk to the oil companies, the major oil companies, and say, hey, it's time for you to make a sacrifice, and prices need to be frozen. And until we get through this conflict, we need to do the right thing here, and not. And so I think what he ought to do is put a lot of pressure on these companies to freeze prices, and engender goodwill with the American public in the process, and not use the situation in the Ukraine to raise prices, which ultimately like they'll do it because costs go up, but they'll also do it in a way that increase their profits. That's gonna happen. And so I think the president is doing something politically, morally right and politically risky. But I think he needs to couple it with a very serious call and a lot of pressure on American oil companies to freeze gas prices.
Well, I think that's smart. I have another, maybe more provocative way forward for him on this, and that would be to compensate fuel buyers for the increased price that they're going to pay during this conflict. Now, so find the mechanism by which someone receives that on their taxes, or receives that in some kind of a stimulus payment that goes to people who have purchased gasoline. Maybe that's distributed through states. Maybe the money goes to states and gas prices are lowered at the state level. Every time a gallon of gas is purchased, it's written off, or it's reimbursed to the person. But the federal government says, hey, there is a thing we need to do right now that we recognize is going to impact fuel in your automobile, and heating oil especially. And we're going to cover that during this brief period of time. I think that would be the most, like, we get it. The thing that I now have come to believe is the American purchaser should not have to pay more money because oil companies or Russia are being greedy or doing whatever, or there's a global crisis at hand. Federal government has the money for this. We've sent $1 billion to Ukraine, and no one has said, how are we going to pay for it?
How do we pay for it?
No one,
because they know how it works.
It's not what you do when you make these decisions. And if you don't know what we're talking about, listen to our Fridays on economics, and you'll get there. So the government has the money. So I think when things like this happen, the government should be much more flexible and do something where people get something. Now, I can see why you wouldn't want to, because building that precedent, that means now the government is encouraging people to burn more oil And that works against where we should get to. But in the meantime, you could do that and then start having the conversation. We need to get off of fossil fuels as a commodity that is so deeply connected to your daily expenditures as a society. We're not going to move away from oil because it's base of plastics and it's the basis of so much material we produce and everything. But for a person buying refined oil for heating and for fueling their vehicle, that is something that, if the cause of increase truly is what's going to be happening for some global good, then that should be a cost written into the global good and not a cost written into your budget or my budget. So I think that's the direction that they ought to go. And they ought to say, hey, Congress, we challenge you to find a way to get this done. And Republicans, we want you to figure out how to get this done too. And, to make sure that this is going to work. And at the same time, then you can put limits on oil producers, United States-based oil producers that don't get to reap extraordinary profits off the top of that. You can cap their profits in a certain period of time. Like, really get after this thing seriously. So rather than saying gas, because I've said this, for 25 years and produced, graphs and memes and images on this, that the president has nothing to do with gas prices. Circumstances on the globe do. And sometimes those circumstances are weather, sometimes it's refineries, sometimes it's greed, sometimes it's access, sometimes it's just a fight between two countries. Lots of other things the president has little to do with. But the president can do some things to respond to that because we've allowed oil to be such a fluctuating commodity.
Yeah.
Having said that, in 2008, I was traveling around the country doing a tour, and we were driving in an RV, and gas prices had reached $4 a gallon. And in 2008, we were told, and there was a big push, there was a whole conversation, remember this phrase, peak oil, that we were reaching a level where gas prices would never again be below $5 a gallon. We were hitting 4, it was going to go to 5, and it would never drop back down again. I don't know, it was like $1.39 or something a couple of years ago. Like, look, gas prices are all over the place, and we need to get that out of this crazy fluctuation that happens on fuel for automobiles and for heating. We need to find a way to get the fluctuations out of impacting our economy. I'm not sure what the answer to that is, but look, gas prices are nowhere near as high as they were in 2007 and 2008. Now, that's not an excuse. I'm just saying they're going to come back down. And we shouldn't be selecting our president based on gas prices, no matter who the president is. I mean, if gas dropped to 14 cents a gallon, it wouldn't be like, well, let's keep Joe Biden in office just because gas prices are low. Like, the president is actually more valuable than just the gas prices. So anyway, I feel like these are the kind of political things and machinations that people should be thinking about and doing something about and working on. And I think, as long as we're giving out money, which we apparently are doing now, we just write checks, auto deposits into U.S. citizens' bank accounts, into foreign country bank accounts. On the other hand, California is charging people a surcharge for driving more miles. So what I'm talking about would be the opposite of that, right? You'd get a bonus. People would start driving around just to get the gas money from the government.
Yeah. I would have to think about it. I think your idea would have to be coupled with some capping of prices, because it ultimately that money trickles up to to the oil companies. And is less like they're the ones ultimately who benefit from that, because if that money goes to paying higher prices, So and there's something there
there's some things you can figure out about how much they can charge and how much profits they can reap and how they're going to be taxed on any money that the companies. That money that's spent on fuel then is prorated across the gas companies, and that's something that they're going to be taxed on. There's all kinds of ways you can get there. I will say that I live in a state where we choose to fund our roads off of gas taxes, and gas taxes are related to the price of the fuel. So one of the things that's happening is, like in the state that I live in, we have an enormous $7 billion budget surplus right now. because the Biden economy is so strong that there's just so much extra revenue, especially on sales tax and on corporate tax payments. It's so high right now that this rise in gas prices is just going to balloon the surplus in the road budget, and then it will crash. In 2 years, it'll go. It'll be depleted or it'll be lowered significantly because the price of gas will go down. So anyway, there's a lot of other impacts to higher gas prices that also have these ripple effects across the system, which is why you could find some way to do something as some kind of a rebate through your state if gas prices get high. And one of the things they're talking about is doing a tax holiday. So you say to states, hey, you, like Minnesota, and maybe you're saying in Arkansas, you are using tax on fuel for cars, especially, but also for heating oil, and that's how you're funding, your roads and so on. The federal government's going to say, cut that tax, whatever you're charging in tax to your citizens, and the federal government will backfill that amount of tax. So that's another way for the government to move money to the states, right? So you and I would pay $1 less a gallon because we're paying about $1.06 per gallon in tax, and that would be lowered, and then the federal government would reimburse the state for that amount. So there's a lot of ways that this thing can go, and I think they should be jumping on all of them. I think this is the time to start fussing with the federal government spending money across our system every possible way, and not just through the big Build Back Better bills. I think there's another way to get there.
Yeah. So gas prices has political impact. The president's ability to tell his story has political impact, and we're going to see that political impact and how it plays out through the midterms. Midterms have started. We had our first voting in Texas on Tuesday in the Texas primary. Not a ton of surprises. Those of you that listen to the podcast, heard me talking last week about Jessica Cisneros as my candidate to watch in Texas, running against Henry Cuellar, one of the most conservative Democrats in the House of Representatives, in a primary. Jessica forced a runoff in Texas. If you don't get 50% of the vote in a multi-person, three or more candidates, if you don't get 50% of the vote, the top two candidates go to a runoff, and Jessica and Henry are now in a runoff. There's several runoffs happening across Texas as a result on both sides of the aisle as a result of that rule. But not a ton of surprises out of Texas. But I got to tell you, Doug, you have heard me express my angst about the midterms probably more than anybody other than my wife. You have heard me ask folks who have been guests on our show to talk me off the ledge. I remain terrified that for a variety of reasons that Republicans are going to take the House of Representatives and maybe even the Senate. And beyond that, it's not just that Republicans will take take Congress here in the midterms, but it's the type of Republicans that will. And what we see out of the Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz wing of the party is going to be the party leadership. And is the mainstream media now catching up with me here on this hot take, Doug?
It sure seems that way. There was a big article today that's about how the Freedom Caucus, which is what a lot of these folks you're referring to, how they refer to themselves. Freedom Caucus has more members than ever. This includes Marjorie Taylor Greene and Gosert and Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert and others. They are more people than before the 2020 election. They gained 11 seats. They're going to try to gain more in this one. And McCarthy, who is the current minority lead in the House of Representatives, is very sympathetic to them, gives them what they want, because he knows he can't become the Speaker of the House if Republicans do, by some fluke of nature, ever regain the majority. He knows he can't become Speaker without them. So here we go. they are now being treated as legitimate. And these are people that, have spoken at white nationalist groups. These are the people that yell out during the State of the Union. These are people that side with Putin. I mean, it's the Trumpist plus crowd, and they are serious as they can be, and they're growing in popularity. And it's just stunning to me that there's more of these people around now than there were a year ago, and 2 years ago, and 3 years ago. Just unbelievable to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, what it shows is that, elections matter. We we started by talking about this little, this viral tweet of mine that I guess is not viral at all compared to, what Doug considers viral, but, was about how we gotta defeat Marjorie Taylor Greene, and it's like elections matter. Like who we vote for matters. And it's amazing to me that, who represents us in Congress is as equally as important as who the president is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But midterm elections get so little attention. The resources, and this historically, this is changing a bit because there's organizations that are working to change this. But historically, you have this sense that your congressional elections is an afterthought, and you don't have any sense. And so Congress has, I think right now it's something like 18% approval rate and a 91% reelection rate.
Wow.
And it's just, we've got to pay better attention. We've got to be more engaged, because we see the dire consequences of what happens when we end up with people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, God forbid, running the show in Congress. How terrifying would that be? But there was, on the Senate side, a little bit of good news, little sense that Republicans may not be in a position to take back the Senate as previously thought that they might be. Things aren't aligning quite as good as they were hoping. The map matters, where the seat, because every House seat is up for re-election every 2 years.
Yeah.
Senate seats are every 6 years, and they're on a rotating basis. They're on it's not all at once. So not everybody's electing a senator right now. And there's a number of seats, and where those seats matter. And there are races where Republicans have not been able to recruit people that they think would have broad support, popular in their states, including a number of governors who've declined to run for Senate. And the Trump-backed candidates seem to be sputtering a bit against the people that they're challenging, and it looks like Democrats are holding a tremendous fundraising advantage in these Democratic Senate races, which as it's really too bad that we often judge the viability of a campaign based on its fundraising numbers. And that is one metric. It's an important metric. It's not the only metric, but it is a metric that's important. And Democrats right now are in these key states of Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, key places where there are Senate races. Democrats typically are holding really significant fundraising advantages over Republican challengers. So all that bodes well. So there is some sense that what looked really, really bleak for Democrats in the Senate is now there might be a little bit of light shining. So, that's a good thing. If, obviously the nightmare scenario for the Biden administration is for Republicans to take both the House and the Senate in November.
Yeah, look, if they get if Republicans gain control of the House, it's going to stall things just as they would stall it in the Senate. The Senate's already there's a demand in the Senate for big things to have a bipartisan agreement on them, and Republicans are unwilling to have a bipartisan agreement on big things. So it's already sort of stalled out, and I think it's going to be interesting. I don't think that the ball is in the air yet. Taking
a basketball analogy,
tennis metaphor. Okay, basketball would be a good one too.
I was thinking like the ball in the air to start the game with a little.
Oh, I was saying that the shots left the hand, because there's a point at which once the shot has left the hand or come off the tennis racket or the ping pong paddle or whatever, once that ball is now moving, all the conditions that move the ball, there's a period of time between when it leaves the racket, leaves the hand, and before it lands wherever it's going to land, that you don't know where it's going to land, right? So some things in politics, they've already left the hand or left the racket. Other things have yet to be struck, or the push has yet to happen off the hand. I think that's where we are in control of the Senate and even control of the House. I don't think the conditions are yet settled. I think by the time you get to October, they're settled, right? Then it's just tallying, what the condition. And there's a few things that could happen. There could be a gust of wind, in a tennis match or something that could move the ball a fraction, and that could change something. But barring, just a small amount of movement, turnout or rainy weather or something, it's pretty well settled. I don't think we're there yet in this. I know that people talk about the set of conditions and everything. I believe that we're in a place where it's still really up in the air. What people choose to do, who chooses to run, what they choose to say, how people choose to spend their time and energy and money, how good Democrats are at being politicians or how good Republicans are at being politicians, that is still will impact what the ultimate outcome is going to be. I don't think it's as determined. Now, could be wrong. We could look back and say, oh man, it turns out you do some polling, people made up their minds. It was settled in spring of 2022. And that was just all wasted energy in between, it'll be curious to see how this actually goes. I'm choosing to believe, I think there's a good reason to choose to believe this. There's still a lot of impact that can be done. We're still in on it.
Let's hope so, because that's the work that we're doing.
Yeah, because it's if you're a Republican, you want the other side to be true. You want to say no. Historic trends tell you this is what's going to happen. This is sort of how it goes. There's only 5 seats. We can name them. We can get them. We can gain control. All of that. I don't, because Joe Biden is the president, though.
Yeah.
It blunts a lot of the worry. And that's why Democrats get less motivated, because they don't have to be as worried in this election as they will in 2024 election, because the impact will be blunted by a president who will stop the federal government from doing very, very bad things that it could otherwise do if it was in the hands of all Republicans again. Which I was listening to this, I mentioned it yesterday to Dan, listening to this podcast called Slow Burn. Do you know this podcast? It tells long version stories of historic events. The first season was about a Nixon storyline where a woman was actually kidnapped and kept away in a hotel and everything. The second season is about Monica Lewinsky and the whole Lewinsky affair. And that takes you then back into 1991 campaign and 1992 and Paula Jones and Vince Foster, the whole dealio. And it's easy to think that politics, can have a 10 and 20 year kind of impact. Boy, it really has a 1, 2, 3, 4 year life cycle. Yes. It went from Clinton being in total disaster in 94 to then winning re-election in 96 and then getting impeached and it's over, and then being more popular when he leaves, and within 517 votes of Al Gore becoming the president. Like so many. And just remembering, that Richard Nixon was impeached and the Republican Party was in total collapse in 1994, and 6 years later, Ronald Reagan wins the first of 2 terms and becomes an immensely popular president. Like, political damage to parties just doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. And any of us who believe that even the most atrocious president in Republican history just it's undamageable. It just is, it's throwing rocks at a mountain. It makes a little ding and a little dust, but that's about it. So that's not how political change happens. It's actually, but a lot of political change does happen. So it doesn't happen by imploding or by disastrous politicking. It happens through a lot of other means, which is what hopefully we're up to in the work that we're doing.
Absolutely.
What do you say? Is that good for today?
I just want to give everybody an update. I have
on your Twitter account,
I have created my Truth Social account.
I
am. So here's the message I have.
Did you receive an invite to do this, or did you just?
No, I just downloaded the app and went for it. Your account has been created successfully. Thank you for joining. Due to massive demand, we have placed you on our wait list. We love you, and you're not just another number to us, but your wait list number is below. Would you like to guess what my wait list number is, Doug?
417,311.
How about you, producer Dan? Do you have a guess at what my wait list number is?
33.
My wait list number is 1,161,599.
Oh, Schenker. They don't have a million people on there. They're lie. They lie. You lie. That's what I want to yell.
You lie.
You lie. A million people. Look, if they have a million people on their wait list, good for you. And why are you keeping a million people?
Yeah, you clearly have horrible infrastructure built if you have a million people on a wait list.
Yeah, and that they don't have a date by which they've said, hey, you sign up now, and then we launch this thing from beta to full, which might be what they're doing. But in fact, it doesn't say it. I will say something about that message that strikes me is Donald Trump's use of "I love you" and like feelings of care and
affection, validation. Yeah.
Which, come on. I mean, should we talk to his wife and kids about if that's actually a thing that he does in human relationships? Yeah. No, it doesn't change it. But the fact that they utilize that kind of language there
so directly, we love you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really something.
There's something to learn there.
So maybe by the time we talk again, I will have gotten into Truth Social and gotten kicked out. So
you think they're going to process that million people in the next 168 hours? That would be awesome. I think we're months away from getting on it, but I too will go on. I want it to be like those Snapchat kids that told them that there were 440,000 people coming to their rally.
They were expecting a million people in Tulsa, and 18 showed up, including Herman Cain, sadly.
Yeah. Well, you forget about that. You forget about all the people who went to Trump events, got COVID, and died. It's no good. All right. Well, thanks for the fun and rambling conversation about all such things. And all the best to the people in Ukraine. We talked about this yesterday, so it's probably what we can get out of today. But, just terrible, terrible.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, tomorrow we're going to talk to Paula Williams. Paula is a transgender person and is a pastor and has come through her own change in conservatism. And we're going to talk about what we can do about the people who are so impacted by transgender bias and bullying and cruelty in our world. So Paula Williams tomorrow at the, on the podcast here.
Awesome.
10 a.m. Central, 11 o'clock on the East Coast, 9 in the mountain region, 8 out on the left coast, and then whatever it is in Hawaii. I don't know. And that's all the places, right? It's all the time zones.
That's it. It's very American centric of you.
Thank you. All right. See you tomorrow.